What's up, everybody? This is Fred Rachani. We have right here via Zoom a very special guest. He's been spending about 10 years on a little known show by the name of Days of Our Lives, and he is now taking his extraordinary talents to an extraordinary cast with Unsinkable, the new audio movie series on Wondery. We're talking to the incredibly talented Paul Telfer. Paul, thank you so much for the time. How's everything going?
Great. Thank you for that introduction. I feel incredible now.
Hey, I do what I can. Now, we definitely want to talk about your decorated career, everything you've had going on, but right now, the task at hand is Unsinkable. It is the critically acclaimed Webby nominated movie series in audio form on Wondery and Wondery Plus. Can you tell us a little bit about Unsinkable and how you got involved?
My good friend, Misha Crosby, um, we worked together off and on over the years on various smaller projects, but then we made a feature film together called Green Rush, got released back in 2020. And during the pandemic, he hit me up out of nowhere when everybody, even soap operas, weren't making shows. And I was just enjoying a long, unexpected hiatus when he said, "Hey, I've put together this project. Um, it's going to sound a little funny when I explain it to you, but I promise you're going to want to be a part of it." And he explained essentially that they were making an audio movie, an incredibly high production value, I guess, a radio play or a podcast or however you'd want to describe it. But really, the effect that they were looking for was something that was, incredibly cinematic. That you could just close your eyes, and the sheer depth of the sound and quality of the sound and fidelity of the sound would just transport you somewhere. And I was like, okay, if you say so. And then I went to the studio to record my piece of it, and they played me some of the production assets that they already had. And here's John Malkovich, and here's Brian Cox, and the various other superstars that they collected to do the thing. I was like, yes, please. I really desperately want to be a part of it. And then as I talked to John Mawson, who really it's ultimately his baby. He was a merchant marine. He understands the history and the experiences of these men on a much more personal level, having done that work. And he had been trying for years to build the project into either a limited series for television or a feature film. But because of the very specific circumstances of the COVID lockdowns, it just occurred to them that this might be the perfect time to make the first step towards realizing this story in some kind of produced fiction, fictitious way, uh, would be through essentially radio, through sound, because they'd be able to grab everybody all around the world, wherever they were hiding, wherever they were locked down, and they could still contribute. And I have to say that the experience of doing it, outside of just being excited to do something when nothing else was going on, the experience of doing it was really, really profound for me, at least, because it's so different. It's so completely and utterly different from working on the soap opera. Working on Days for 10 years at this point, I didn't realize just how much I had internalized the way we make soap opera into my acting process, or whatever you want to call it. We do a huge amount of material very quickly, constantly. Whereas this was kind of the opposite. This was a very precious and very important story to these two creatives that they were incredibly felt a huge responsibility to tell the story properly and the way it should be told. And so there was just a ton of resources for me to research. And outside of the documented history that is out there on the internet, John and the team had stuff for me to learn from as well. And to come from something that like soap opera, which, like the acting, we try and make it as naturalistic as we can, but obviously we have crazy storylines where people are coming back from the dead, or getting possessed by demons, or all the crazy stuff that happens on our show. To go to something that is grounded and based in reality, but in its own way is completely incredible. Like if it hadn't really happened, you would struggle to write this story and have people believe it really happened. Um, to jump from one thing into this thing was so much fun. And really exciting because the same thing happened to the actors that we hope happen to the audience when they listen to it. The actors, we essentially close our eyes and you can see yourself on the boat. You can feel yourself on the boat doing all the daring do and heroism that occurs in the story. But it was really odd when it was finally released. I remember us doing a few interviews early on during the release of the project. And what really surprised me is when I was forced to really think about making it, some of my memories are of being on the boat. Like in my imaginative, like when I try and remember that time, my memory is of the imaginative space and reality that I created for myself while we were recording. And it just took me a minute to go like, oh yeah, it's not a movie. Like it's just sound because when you hear it, like it's very hard. It's very, as a person even that was involved in it, um, to untrick yourself. Like you trick yourself into believing it's all real, so you can play it for real and it'll sound real. But some little part of my brain was like, no, that really happened. You went away, you did all these things. So for all this time later, for it to be recognized and to be getting all this acclaim, I'm just so happy for the lads because for John and Misha because they really did pull off a bit of a miracle with the way they put this thing together. I'm really grateful to be a part of it.
It is an absolutely fantastic cast that you are a part of, one of the incredibly talented actors. That's interesting for you to say how you got immersed and you hope the audience gets immersed because from what I understand, nobody was in the same room. Everybody was in different
Mhm.
parts of the world during the COVID restrictions and everything. I'm sure that wasn't fun for the post-production team,
Right.
but for the actors like yourself, like, did it help you immerse yourself even more because it's all you and you literally just have your script, your thoughts, and your imagination?
Absolutely, because so much of acting really is fighting against self-consciousness. You are aware. I'm aware that I'm Paul. I'm not really Xander on days or Hercules or whatever character you're playing. You're not really. Even Daniel Day Lewis. He's not. He's just a really good actor. He's not schizophrenic. He doesn't literally believe he's become something else. Um, you're using your imagination to create something that feels very real to you and then hopefully is broadcast out through you to an audience that accepts it as real for the time of the story, for the time it takes to tell the story. The thing that was so special about this is that very often in screen acting you are forced to kind of like fight against all the various distractions of production. There might be a camera right up in your face, there might be a different person reading you the lines because the actor that you should be reading lines with, for whatever reason, production has sent them off to do something else that day, or they're just not available. They're on the other side of the world promoting a podcast or whatever it is. So very often you're having to use your craft to essentially fill in the gaps or cover over some of the things that are so distracting and telling you that this isn't real, this isn't happening, and you're having to trick yourself into it. Whereas there's something about the intimacy of the way this particular production was recorded, and just it being Misha and John in the room with you, that very quickly you're able to get back all the way back to that almost childlike sense of play that is so useful for acting and so like at the core of much of what we actually do. And also just having, like I say, the resource of John right there. If there was a question I had that was specific to the experience of the merchant marine, um, like the way their lives work, the way their relationships would work on the boat, all of that. Like to have somebody right there, not having to have a bunch of ADs run around and ask the director or try and find the writer who's on lunch, or like it was just all right there. It allowed us to get to that place of like a very intimate grasp of the reality of the story, at least, almost immediately. And I was surprised that I remember saying to them, like, oh, wow, this is. I mean, to me, this feels like it's going really well. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It is. This is exactly what we want. And it was just very satisfying to feel that you can still get there as an actor quickly. That you don't necessarily need costumes help. Being in a real location really helps. Um, quality props that don't feel I'd much rather swing around a real sword than a fake sword that's made to look like a real sword but feels too light, things like that that you only think about once you're on set. Not having the set, having it all be a purely imaginative um, creation in your head based on what you've been given in the writing. It's so pure that, yeah, I loved it. I would actually like to do more of it. The day schedule, you're not really able to do much else outside of that show. Um, but there is something that's so liberating about not having to use your face. Like your face obviously is it's so much of your job as a screen actor. People will cast you just based on you having a certain look. Whereas to be kind of freed of all of that, and you're just the voice, you're just the content that you are sharing, you're just the material that you're sharing, you're just the words that you've been given. It just, I don't know, it just takes you back all the way to what first makes you want to be an actor, that kind of like sense of freedom and not being trapped by who you actually are. You're able to escape it. So all of that side of it was just very exciting, but also inspiring. It made me want to do more of it, and also hold on to that feeling when I go back to the soap opera of just stay playful, try and stay as alive as possible, and try not to notice just how crazy things can get either in the story or in the way we make the show. Uh, just allow all of that to like blow over you as you stay, you know, in the moment or in the character in the story. It was a very good distillation, if you know what I mean. Like, yeah.
Not that you never fell out of love with acting, but I feel like it really kind of sparked something in you too. To
Well, it's like opening up a
you got to
different
dig deep.
muscle, yeah, or a different part of your mind again. Yeah, I was just surprised at how smoothly it all went, because you'd think like that, it's a bit of a jump to being in this nice, safe, dry studio to being asked to imagine yourself in the pouring rain, in the middle of a horrible storm, under attack from Nazis. Do you know what I mean? It feels like a big leap, but it really isn't, because your imagination is boundless. So long as you're given the support and the information you need, you can tell any story in this space. So far, I don't mean to get off topic, but so over the past few months, my wife's been down in San Diego doing a play, and when I've been visiting her, we haven't had our normal TV setup. So for some reason, I just got obsessed and started binge watching this old American Western series called Gunsmoke, and fell completely in love with it. Absolutely incredible show. And then I found out they had radio plays. It was a radio show before it was a TV show. So I had to go listen to the radio show. And what was fascinating about it was how much bigger the radio show felt than the TV show, even though obviously the TV show was so much more expensive to produce and had all these big actors in it. There's something you can do with just sound that your brain fills in all the gaps, and you can, create this much larger sense of a bustling city. Than, as soon as you have to point the camera at things, you have to pay for it all. Whereas like, if it's just sound, you can trust that the audience will create it for you, as long as you do it correctly, which the boys obviously have.
Amazing. Well, Paul, we thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on 10 years of Days of Our Lives. Before we let you go, one more question in a few sentences or less. For people that aren't already convinced, why should they check out Unsinkable on Wondery?
It's an extraordinary story, true story of daring do and of ordinary people coming together under the most extraordinary circumstances, not only to survive but to get home. And I just think it's such a element, like it's just such a primal story that ultimately they could have been ancient Greeks, it could be happening right now, like, but it's that core of people throwing aside any existing hierarchies or any existing relationships to survive and win in the moment. And yeah, I'm just so proud to be a part of telling this heroic story of people that weren't necessarily soldiers, but were still, as merchant marines, they were still forced into combat, forced into danger, and showed incredible character to get back to the people that they loved and to take care of each other. Yeah, so just a very exciting true story.